Welcome back to another day in your pursuit of a Bachelor's of Multifamily Science here at the Apartment Academy. I am your host, the Dean of the Apartment Academy, Daniel Cunningham. And the Apartment Academy's podcast here is the multifamily industry's only operations-focused podcast featuring insights from industry leaders, investors, vendors, and technology providers. So if you invest in multifamily real estate or you're involved in the day-to-day operations of on-site apartment buildings, we are your source for efficient operations and maximizing ROI. Today's podcast was with Andrew Silverman, COO of Modular Companies. And at the end of this conversation, we start talking about what should probably be a podcast all on its own, which is Accessory Dwelling Units, ADUs. So if that's of interest to you, you're going to get your appetite will be whet a little bit by today's conversation. But Modular Companies is interesting in that they have a wide variety of product type that goes from 300 units down to 4 units. And managing a portfolio like that is really a challenge. Let's hear how Andrew and his team addresses it. Hi, Andrew. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Nice to be here and joining you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So we always like to start out a little bit about your journey, how the various professors here at the Apartment Academy end up in the multifamily industry. So if you wouldn't mind, give us a little bit about your background. Again, like we always say, it's not where you started. It probably doesn't look like where your initial trajectory was sending you. So tell us how you got here.
Sure, absolutely. I started off my career, I've always loved real estate. I got my real estate license before I even graduated college, worked in a real estate sales office during college, and right after college, I found myself in a real estate analyst role, really just consulting. And from that, I realized I loved working with residential developers, and then joined a residential developer and started getting more into construction and the combination of real estate and construction. Joined a startup at the beginning of the century, and recognized that taking my construction and real estate expertise and then applying that to a rapid scale startup was a really rewarding venture. And so I literally went from different business venture to business venture, but always in the real estate and construction field, modular housing, web van, and along the Starwood, and then along the way, met kind of the multifamily industry, which had always been circling around, and recognized that that industry has everything that I love. It has development, it has renovation, it has customer service, it has obviously business and complicated math associated with it and value add. And so it was really just a combination of all these very diverse factors, which I realized were really appealing to me, because I can jump from financials to leasing to construction to value add to investors in any given day. And I kind of like having the broad brush of it all. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, it's one of the things that people don't realize about this industry is that when you're a community manager managing a, 20 to 100 units, somewhere in that range or more, you're getting exposed to accounting and construction and marketing, and it's a very very, I think, demanding industry from that standpoint. You have to wear a lot of different hats. And then, by the way, this might be a little departure here, but what was your modular housing experience?
So it was coming right out of the Great Recession. I was a real estate developer up until 2008, and I had a friend who was starting a company called Zeta Communities. And by coincidence, we had built one modular housing in a vacation resort where you could only build 6 months of the year. So we figured with modular, we could build and market in the same 6 month season, and learned a ton from building one house. And then that person found out that I had experience in this, and brought me on to help found this company called Zeta, which had a great 3 or 4 year run, and learned a lot in the industry and did a lot of projects. And so yeah, that was my modular run, which was wonderfully rewarding. And it was all about how to deliver housing most cost effectively as well as sustainability. And that seemed like a really compelling combination for me.
Yeah, so I think we might have that in common. So I was the co-founder of Living Homes, which now became
I
Plant
noticed
Prefab.
that. I was,
Yeah.
yep,
So
which is great.
like you, has same interest. Like, how can we provide sustainable, affordable housing? And they've struggled to apply it. I think modular manufacturers struggle to apply it to multifamily, but hopefully they're getting there. But anyway, so then tell us a little bit about Mosser. You have even though the company's has some size to it, it has a very different, I think, portfolio makeup than what you expect to see in somebody that oversees so many units as you guys do. Tell us a little bit about the company.
Sure. Um, from my perspective, kind of feeding off the intro I gave, I'm used to jumping into that concept that has a business plan and then rapidly scales the business plan. The concept of Mosser, and this is something which was incredibly appealing to me, is this has been a slow growth build over the last 65 years. So they've been in San Francisco for decades, not with the goal to scale and build a best in class institution, but really just to provide community housing and do it once, do it again, repeat. And so it's really um, it's really kind of a different mindset, which is we understand our markets, we understand our residents, we understand our properties. We feel like we provide a really needed product and service for workforce housing, which is something so important to focus on in this day and age. And so let's do that more broadly and make sure that we can have the best impact that we can. And so I really appreciate my CEO Nevio Mosser. He grew up in this business. He was a janitor with Mosser 30 something, 40 something years ago, and so he as much as anyone understands at at the gnat's detail exactly what is entailed in making this business work for our customer, the residents, and for our communities. And so that mindset was really just somewhat of a departure from what I'm used to. And I really feel like if just understanding it kind of from the blocking and tackling perspective, and then um, scaling that out gradually, sustainably, and then just looking to be the best operator we can be for the community.
So rather than 200 units and 4 stories over podium, you have some smaller assets. You have what looks to be adaptive reuse assets. I know you guys have the Lido here in Los Angeles, which is a very interesting asset with a storied history. What is the smallest? What are the couple examples of the smaller buildings that you manage? How many units are on the small side?
Smallest, I believe, is 4 units. And
Yeah.
so our average building size is probably 25 units. So we have a lot of probably 30% of our buildings are under 16 units. And it really ranges from 4 units up to over 300 units. So it's really, and the buildings perform very differently. We have one basically condo grade building that's beautiful and high end, but for the most part, it's really just these little infill buildings in these very existing traditional neighborhoods of San Francisco that are our bread and butter, and they're buildings that tell all the stories of San Francisco and Oakland and Los Angeles. You mentioned the Lido Hotel California, and many other things, and so this is the history of San Francisco and Oakland and LA, and it's an awesome privilege to be able to operate these properties, but it's also it is a quite a responsibility to take these 100-year-old properties that are fully occupied or largely occupied and continuously upgrade them and keep them current with the modern day, whether it's from a code perspective or from an amenity perspective.
Yeah, yeah. The operating dynamics in a company like this, and that's what I wanted you to bring to light was, it is, I think it's unusual to see that spread in product type, from 4 units up to 300 units. And so you have to, I think, you can't have the same kind of cookie cutter approach that other, like, say, large institutional owner and operators can take. So I want to dig in a bit to that today. Is there something in particular that since you've been at Monster, that you've discovered that they do really well, better than others, that's unique to them, perhaps? Is there anything along those lines that you could share?
Yeah, I think two things stand out for me, which is one is I would argue that pound for pound, we know our properties and what properties like this take to maintain and upkeep as well or better than anyone in the industry, just because we've been doing it so long. One thing to that point, and this is kind of speaks to the history of Mosser, is we have almost 10 employees who've been with us more than 20 years. I'm not sure I've ever worked with a company that had a 20-year employee. And so we
Yeah.
celebrate these folks, and they know how everything works, and they teach the rest of us how everything works. And so it's really understanding the nuts and bolts of these properties. I think the other thing which was very compelling for me in joining Mosser is that more than any company I've ever been with, I feel like we are the community. We're an 85% minority company. We live in our buildings, we work in our buildings, and so we really understand as well as anyone what it takes, to operate and manage these properties, as well as what our 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 residents, what our customers really want and expect from us in order to maintain good solid housing in classic San Francisco. So I think both those really speak to kind of knowledge and heart, and I think that's something in which Moss really excels.
That sharing of institutional knowledge that you mentioned earlier, that the folks you've had that know everything, they know all the ins and outs and where all the skeletons are hidden, or where all the filters are hidden, perhaps
I wasn't going to
in our
bring that
case.
up, but yes, thank you.
um, how tell us a little about how Mosser's approach to, let's call that training. How do you take that institutional knowledge and preserve it across and share it across an entire organization like that with such varied levels of product type?
First and foremost, it's not easy. You really have to stay on this because it just requires that. I'd say it's twofold. One is, we know the things we need to be trained on. Certainly, fair housing compliance, making sure, fair housing really just speaks to having an inclusionary environment, and so that is something which I think we is just in our mission. So whether it's fair housing, environmental requirements, Prop 65, all those things that you need to know in order to run a business, are the things that we train up through certain mediums out there. Um, I think the second part of this, which is more um, kind of the Mosser, we have something called MOPS, which is our Mosser operating procedures, and this is a long written document that is constantly in motion. It's constantly evolving, but it's making sure that we understand best practices and how to do everything soup to nuts in real estate and in resident service. So, um, and then I think the third thing that is just so essential is boots on the ground, which is um, whether it's myself, whether it's Nevi, our CEO, whether it's any of our leadership, or whether it's any of our front lines teams, we're always out in the field inspecting what we expect and making sure
Hmm.
that things, not just we're taking somebody's word for it, but things are at the quality we expect, at the responsiveness we expect. And so really that's a mindset that we want to train into our teams, that we're always responsive within a certain period of time, we're always considerate. And so that's just kind of the way we do business, not how we do business, but the way we do business. And that also gets trained into our teams, and because we want them to know what good looks like, and whether it's from a property perspective or from a customer care perspective.
Always love the term inspecting what you expect. Yeah, I think that's an important philosophy to carry with you. Does technology play a role in any of that for you? Do you guys use remote inspection, digital inspection tools? Are you Excel, clipboards? How do you guys manage to do that consistently across all the properties?
Um, yeah, and so I think for me the perfect union is to take something that's really old and tried and true, and then
Yeah.
marry that with the best in class technology that's out there. So, how do you take a 100-year-old building and a 65-year-old operation, but also make sure that it's running with the efficiency of a Silicon startup? So that's
Yeah.
the goal. Are we fully there? No, it's always a work in progress.
Right.
But yeah, over the last couple of years, we've really gone from I'll call it a monthly reporting type of company to a let's push everything into real time or as real time as we can get it type reporting. And so at any given moment, I can look on we have a job tracking platform that we use where I can see where all of our teams are. At any given time, I can see whether they're on lunch break or whether they're working. I can see progress photos in there. And so that's how we manage our teams in the field. And Modular self-performs almost everything. So
Yeah.
that's another one of our keys to success. It's our janitorial team, it's our construction team, it's our leasing team, it's our property management team, and so it's really we're accountable. It's not some third party vendor. Yes, we have vendors we work with, but for the most part, it's on us to make sure that we're delivering the service that we want. Um, on the technology front, we're in the process of adopting over the last year really two platforms that tie into Yardi. One is Knock, really on the marketing and leasing front, and the other is Canopy, which is on the really just the broad view financials, leasing, property management, um, leaderboard front.
Is
And
that kind of a BI tool, Canopy?
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a one of the things about the companies that, and I've worked with a lot of technology companies over the last 10 years, and you know the lesson learned for me is the platform can be great, but the leadership also has to be there to make sure that they're adapting that platform to our needs. And so there's been these two companies that we're working with that is just mentioned. They have great leadership teams who really want to work with us to make sure they're nailing the product right. Canopy as examples a very early on company, but their leadership team is very focused on learning from us so we're helping them pilot it, and because then it becomes a better product for us, and it becomes a better product for them as they're providing this service for other companies as well. I looked recently at 247 Leonardo, one I know you're intimately familiar with, and that's I think how you and I came to be meeting today, looking at that for
Thank you.
perhaps on the compliance side. So we're always looking, and I think the technology lesson learned for me is for every 10 you look at, one's really going to be serviceable for you. So you have to be very selective in picking something that really marries in well to our Yardi platform or other pages, real page platform or other out there. So it's yeah, technology is hugely important and lets us actually keep up on our teams, on our responsiveness, etc.
Let's, if you don't mind, I'll kind of delve a little further into Canopy because I think the rise of BI platforms in the industry is a trend that's here to stay, and it started with, we saw early on that obviously the larger operators tend to have dive into these kind of things first, but it is really catching hold. What are some of the key things that you're looking for? You mentioned it's real time, so you said some of them, which is like you're tracking your workforce real time, which is amazing. I think that's probably something you guys do better than most. What are you looking for out of Canopy? What is it providing in terms of KPIs? How is it guiding the business, or will it guide the business once you've got it tweaked?
And that's a great question because the goal is it for it to help guide and provide ahas into the business. And so I think it's really twofold. You want an easy UX user experience where we can just go and see what's happening. How many leases do we have? Um, how are how's our financial performance? How many work orders do I have outstanding? What does the unit turn activity look like? I think the other part in that is you want things to be pushed to you. Hey, here's an outstanding work order. It hasn't been addressed in a week. Let's make sure that that's being pushed to the right person because, you know, the ugly truth is we're not perfect. And property management is a 24/7 job. And
Yes.
there are requests at 2 a.m. in the morning. There are requests on Sundays. And it's just part of the business, and we welcome that. But the reality is, you need some of this technology and these systems in order to help you stay on top of everything, um, because it's easy not to. It's easy to miss things, dare I say. And so, having technology platforms that also say, as I said, this work order's been outstanding for 7 days. This work order says it's been addressed but hasn't been closed. This unit turn's taking 2 weeks. This unit's been offline for a month. What's going on? So anything out there which is technology that can help ping us to say, hey, heads up, you've got a missing tooth here. that's really something which is appreciated, because we can have all the best intent in the world. Doesn't mean we're going to be perfect. Doesn't mean anyone out there is going to be perfect. So if we have some tools that ride alongside with us that help us marry up intent with execution, that's really a good thing. I think the third part in this, which is Canopy is working really well on with us, is the communication. So in property management, there is this workflow that goes from property management to work order to asset manager to all these different there's all these different stakeholders in a certain issue. And so somebody wanting to understand what's going on and why, and somebody putting a note on an issue, and then that having that note be attached to that issue so somebody else can be informed without having to send an email or pick up the phone, that's a wonderful thing as far as everyone being just aware as to what's actually going on. So it's just those little things that make our lives easier, but also make our working lives more informed. That's kind of what we're looking for, and we have high hopes for Canopy and other platforms out there that we're working with.
You're full of great catchphrases today. I'll say that, Andrew. I like the intent, turning intent into execution. That's another good one. Again, I think that I like that. That resonates with us. Certainly, my background with Leonardo 24/7 was very similar in that, we wanted to solve the problem of, look, there's a lot on the plates of these community managers and service managers every day, and how do you prioritize it and assist that, help them make sure that they don't drop any balls on a day-to-day basis, because there's a lot to do. It's a business where a lot is asked of the folks on site. So that makes sense to me. When you said that you self-perform, so unit turns, carpet replacements, painting, all that's generally done in-house.
Yeah, as long as it's not too technical. So
Yeah.
we have the boiler company, we have the license, we have the electricians, we have the roofers. So things which are highly specialized or just larger projects, we're gonna bring in vendors for. Um, but for a for our paint and cleans, that is something we have a wonderful team that does all of our paint and cleans. For I'll call them our light renovations, we have our own licensed general contractor. We run all of our permits through that. We run our teams through that. We'll outsource some renovations as well, just to manage our scale. But for the most part, that's something that we proudly self-perform, and that way we can keep tighter controls over cost and quality, and frankly neighbor impact, because one of the greatest challenges with these 100-year-old buildings is you have to work on them while they're occupied, as I said. And so how do you do that as least impactfully to the other residents? You can't not do it. You can't not do the soft story. We all want to build ADUs into these housing constrained cities, and so and we all need to upgrade these units that have fixtures and appliances and finishes from the 1980s in order to make sure that we keep these occupied for current residents. And so there's a lot of ongoing work that needs to happen, and yeah, it's great to have our own teams to do it. I feel like we can maintain a higher quality and consideration over it by having that. So
I'd say that's probably another characteristic, listening to you talk, that sets your company apart. I think even some large operators that I'm familiar with don't have a lot of. I mean, when you said you have your own roofing people and that sort of thing, I mean, that's pretty amazing at a company of your scale. How do you make that decision of when to retain that kind of skill set in house, and when that starts to erode your margin, and it makes sense to just rely on vendors? How do you guys strategically make that decision?
I think it's both size of project and complexity. And so we're doing a lot of fire life safety upgrades right now, obviously. And so we're not necessarily inclined to build our own fire life safety company because we don't understand it. It's kind of beyond our core skill set. But fortunately, there are a lot of good vendors out there who we can just work with, and plug into the program. And we do have our own construction management team, and so the CM team, and we have our facilities team. And so how do we make that decision? We will literally every other week we will sit in a room with my head of construction management and my head of facilities, and we will talk about, all right, this job, should we handle that internally, or is this something that we want our construction management team to handle? And so exterior paint's a great example. If we're just patching and painting and doing a little weatherproofing and it's only so many feet off the ground, that's going to be something we're going to handle internally. If we're if we're erecting a scaffolding and repainting the entire exterior of a building, we're probably going to bring in a contractor, because our teams, our teams are constantly busy and have a certain amount of work. If we have a massive project that gets thrown at us, we just don't. We can't necessarily pull them off their day-to-day janitorial or maintenance and put them on one large project. So it's some of it's technical expertise, some of it is just simply scale of project and how to most effectively get it done.
Let's talk a little bit about your the mission of Mosser, because I feel again it's something that sets you guys apart and worth talking about. What would you say, generally speaking? What do you say? What would you say is the what is incumbent upon a multifamily operator when it comes to social responsibility? The sense about fair, we all know why fair housing is in place. We understand philosophically there, but is there something beyond that that you think, as providers of homes and housing for millions and millions of people, is there something else, a higher calling that we have, or is this mostly just a business that happens to deal with a lot of people's daily lives?
That is a loaded question. Um, and I think it's a great question, so thank you for asking it. From a mission perspective, from what we want to do, I think the word, and this is, it's a cliche word, but I think the word that we have to keep coming back to is we serve the community. And so, yes, we serve residents in our property, but those, and certainly in some of the markets we work in right now, we also have to help look after what's out on the street, and some of the neighborhood challenges that have only inflated during COVID, and the city of San Francisco is certainly working focused on some of these challenges as well. But I think part of our charter is to not just look after our residents in the building, but also help look after the community on the streets. And so we work with a lot of work with a lot of subsidized programs. We've proudly worked with homeless prenatal program. We've proudly worked with Tenderloin Housing Clinic in San Francisco.
Hmm.
We have been advocates of Urban Alchemy, which is a new group that has come out that has really done an amazing job at helping to, I'll say, stabilize some of the tougher streets of San Francisco. And so we've been talking to them for 9 months, 10 months, and they finally launched about 3 months ago, 4 months ago. But it's how can we as a private operator also help some of these public or quasi-public entities help to strengthen, help and to provide greater safety for the community. And we're able to influence that just because we've been here 65 years. We're not massive. We're a tiny portion of San Francisco, and I think that's, when you think about a decent sized landlord in San Francisco, we're a fraction of the overall housing market, but it's not a large market, and so we can influence a little bit just by having a few buildings in the Tenderloin. We can work with the CBD, the Central Business District there, and hopefully influence some things that'll help with the broader community. So I think we have to be looking at what's going on outside of just our buildings, and we have to be influencing a lot of the positive forces that are out there, that together I think we can rally and make for a better neighborhood, make for a better city. It's idealistic, but I don't think we can afford not to take that approach. And so Mosser and I have been really proud to work with some of the local tenant activists during rent relief. We have a great partnership with Tenderloin Housing Clinic. We're working with each other to make sure each party can support as much of the community as possible to help overcome some of the rent relief challenges. And so that's really rewarding. That's one of the things I really enjoy about property management is helping our residents, but also helping the broader community. And I think if I think there's more work that we can all do, but I think it's something that is a needed focus as a part of just the operation.
Have you seen, what we're reading is that after a year of everybody panicking that we were going to be at 30% occupancies, that that now everything's full and rents are going through the roof. In areas like San Francisco, where again we read the Great Resignation, people are leaving their homes in cities like San Francisco, and they're going to go all live in Incline Village, Nevada, and work from there. What has been your experience, and are you surprised at the sort of the rebound effect that cities like San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Manhattan, that they have exhibited since beginning of this year or the end of last year, really?
Yes, yes and no. So just taking San Francisco, San Francisco is always an aggressive rebounder. Meaning, whether it's the Great Recession, whether it was the dot-com bomb, San Francisco has it's such a small market and it's such a high demand market that it always typically rebounds pretty well. But it was always a lot of these markets as well were also pretty resilient to downturns because it was such a supply constrained market. I think what was really interesting over the during the pandemic, which we're out of, right? Okay, we're not out of yet, but we're getting there, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And what's been very interesting during the pandemic is how not resilient it was. Now people went for more open space, et cetera. And so, yes, we saw a nice migration back into the city I'd say last spring and summer. Delta came up and kind of quieted that. Omicron came up, kind of quieted that. But what I'm seeing is it's really a two-phase recovery. So I was just talking to somebody earlier who was a property manager in East Palo Alto, and they're they're struggling to recover. What we're seeing in some of our more working class neighborhoods is those are trailing notably the higher income neighborhoods, and so Pacific Heights and Marina, they're recovering faster than the Tenderloin and some of the other more workforce housing neighborhoods. My theory on that is we know that all the restaurants and bars haven't fully opened. They're not fully staffed up yet. There's a lot of service jobs out there which haven't fully come back to life, and there's also a lot of people who are not fully re-engaged in the workforce. And so I think the last leg of this is going to be a little bit more of the service jobs where some of the more working class neighborhoods will be kind of the last ones to really start picking up again. So we've seen things stabilize, but we haven't seen any sort of vast rebound in some of those more working class neighborhoods.
Is there still an opportunity, do you think, in San Francisco to expand the housing stock um, outside of building, large, high density, high rises, mid rises, more of the kind of product that you have in place already, or have we maxed out in the city of San Francisco, our ability to house people in product like what you guys have?
I think you're speaking to the beauty of the ADU program, and being able to add existing units into new units into existing properties. And so, you know, each ADU project that I've worked on has been anywhere from 1 to I think 10 units. That sounds small, but if you look at those over a series of hundreds of properties in San Francisco, I think it starts to make a difference. And you're also then putting housing in more walkable neighborhoods than putting housing south of Market where you're getting on public transportation to the core job centers. So there's absolutely that opportunity. It's not an easy opportunity, meaning it's still the city has made it easier. The city continues to work with operators out there in order to try to enable ADU housing, but that is, we see that as the opportunity to put another, call it 10% housing stock into the existing built environment, and that's an exciting opportunity because you're literally then putting housing in the 99 and 100 walkable score neighborhoods, which is exactly I think how it's meant to be.
Cool. Let's talk about this for just a second. First of all, can you define for those that are listening what ADU housing is and how that works?
Accessory dwelling unit, and basically if you So we have a property that on Hayes Street, Hayes Valley, great neighborhood, and our construction management team just oversaw the addition of 4 units completed at the end of last year in I want to say it's a 14-unit building, and so we just increased in that one building. We increased the occupancy by 30%, 30% more
Wow.
housing in that one building, and so um, if you could do that across all of San Francisco, that would be a tremendous number. Um, but so that's the ADU concept, and for the most part, you're taking up uh, storage spaces, parking garages, dead space. There's a building on Union Street that we have right now where it's a beautiful 3-story building, and then there's just a bunch of shelf space below it, which could be a wonderful series of ADUs with ocean views, um, and yet it's just shelf space right now. And so with the combination of a soft story structural work coupled with infilling some really nice studio 1-bedroom units in there, you're providing brand new additional condominium grade rental units in these 100-year-old properties in San Francisco. It's a wonderful concept to think about because you're bringing the old and new together.
As an investor, then you're going beyond just the typical value add proposition where we're going to repaint and add stainless steel, get rid of the old avocado colored appliances. Um, you're seeing your opportunities to add actual additional units to a property, and how hard is that to get through the city? Is this something that your average investor and real estate investor off the street owns a few apartments that they can get into? Is this really a skill and a specialty you have to understand to dive into?
The latter, 100%. If somebody wants to get into it, they need to then make sure they have a team of architects, engineers, um, dare I say, perhaps expediters, because the planning process, it's probably a 2-year process, and it can be longer than that, and it would be hard pressed to be much shorter than that from design, permitting, execution. The planning process will probably take a year just by itself before we even swing the first hammer, and so and it is complicated. And I think the other part of these 100-year-old buildings that are San Francisco is the plumbing's 100 years old, the electrical can be 100 years old, or was upgraded in 1975, and so you have to, as you're building the new units down below, we're now thinking about fire sprinkler systems, because you have to do them obviously to the current code, and so it's really
Right.
marrying as you're typically doing these ADUs, you're also then thinking about, all right, are we replumbing this entire building? Are we rewiring this entire building? We will do that as a part of the unit renovations. We will always look for the opportunity to not just do the cosmetic, but to also do brand new electrical, brand new plumbing, brand new Energy Star appliances, etc. Um, but you're kind of upgrading the building from the inside out for the most part. When you get to these ADUs, then you're also looking at the systems and saying, all right, my old boiler was from 10 years old and had the capacity of just the units there. Let's think about a brand new heating system, hydronic heating system, mini split heat pumps.
Hmm.
You start to think about what do we do for these units, but then what is the opportunity to actually help on the sustainability of the overall property while we're doing that. And so you're not just focusing on that storage space in the bottom. You're thinking about you know you have to think about the entire building envelope and how best to look after everything in that property and get it current.
Yeah. What a fascinating way to add value to your investment, but also contribute to housing stock in such a constrained environment like San Francisco. I know we're running a little bit over longer than we like to go. This has been really interesting. Let me just ask you one more question. Is there anything for those that might be considering getting into the multifamily industry? Is there any hint you would share with them, any advice you would share with them that you wish you had known before jumping into the multifamily?
Sure, I think the to do it well, you want to get into the multifamily business because you want to be in the customer service business, and you want to
Yes.
have the awesome charter of looking after residents and communities. I think there's been, obviously this industry has swelled a lot over the last 20 years, and I think there are a lot of people who get into the industry for a lot of different reasons. But, for me, if I didn't enjoy the resident experience, if I didn't enjoy looking after a property and feeling proud about how good it looks or how well it performs and knowing that our residents are well taken care of, I don't know, given the 24/7 nature of it, you have to like that part. Otherwise, it can be a little overwhelming. And so I think and this is again the thing that I really appreciate about the Mosser family is this is in their lifeblood. This looking after communities, looking after residents is in their lifeblood, and that's the part where it's an operation and a resident serving operation first, and it's a business second. And I think where one can get in trouble is if you put the business before you put the customer. And that's not just in property management, that's in anything. I think it needs to be a resident centric outlook, and then let good things happen from that, as opposed to the other way around. That's my own personal belief, and it's served me well.
I can't disagree with a single word. It is definitely a people first business that happens to take place among some very valuable real estate, for sure. Is there, if people are interested, folks have, you do third party management, or is this all owned and operated by Mosser?
It's a bit of mix. So Mosser itself has been investing in real estate since the 50s. But we also do more of late. We also partner up with other folks to actually manage as well. So we're owners and operators.
So if somebody's interested in approaching Mosser for some third party management, how would they reach out to you guys, Andrew?
We'd actually do straight third party management. We're always engaged in the investment as well. And so if somebody's looking for a partnership to help manage properties and operate properties in the gateway cities, they can reach out to me. They can reach out to Mosser, and happy to chat with them.
Great. Well, this has been really interesting, Andrew. I would love to dive deeper on the ADU stuff and a bunch of things, but we try to keep this down to a digestible time frame. But thank you for packing so much good stuff in a short period of time. I really appreciate you coming on with us today.
You as well. Enjoy the conversation. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks. Take care, Andrew. Well, that's a wrap here at the virtual campus of the Apartment Academy. We thank you for logging in and listening again today. If you've enjoyed these podcasts and you feel like your management company could use a little advice from some of the professors here at the Apartment Academy, then go to our website, apartmentacademy.com, and click Help Me. We'll send you a questionnaire and provide individualized responses to your answers at no charge that I guarantee will offer you insights on ways you can immediately improve apartment operations. Until next time, class is dismissed. I hope you took good notes. The only test you'll have awaits you every day in the leasing office.